Coming up next on this special pledge edition of Another View, it's all about African American women. We'll talk with two authors about two very different aspects of being a black woman. First up, political science professor, author, and political pundit Melissa Harris Perry. She just wrote a book called Sister Citizen: Shame, Stereotypes and Black Women in America. We'll explore how negative stereotypes of black women rob us of our political power. In our second half hour, author and speech coach Christine Jahnke shares tips on sounding your best when speaking in public. I'm Barbara Ham Lee, and an hour of empowerment is next, right after the news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
That's all our listeners out there clapping for us. Isn't that exciting? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. I am so excited about our guest today, but I'm even more excited because this is the first time that Another View, the radio show, has been on the air during our fall pledge drive. I sure hope you will support this program by becoming a member of WHRV. You can call 889-9476 or go to WHRV.org and click and contribute. Now, we're going to talk more about supporting the show a little later on, but right now I want to welcome to Another View political science professor, author, and political pundit Melissa Harris Perry. She's written a new book called Sister Citizen: Shame, Stereotypes and Black Women in America. Welcome to the program, Melissa. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Good. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I know that you're a member of WNO, New Orleans Public Radio, I believe.
I am. I have been living in New Orleans just about a year now, and I, of course, there's a couple things you do when you move to town. You get a library card. You put new plates on your car, and you become a member of your local NPR station. And
Fantastic.
I haven't put new plates on my car, but I've got the library card and the NPR station membership.
Well, that's fantastic. So you can understand then how excited we are because our listeners will have an opportunity to become a part of WHRV. Can't beat it. Absolutely. So, Sister Citizen, you're talking about stereotypes of black women and how it's holding us back politically. How did you come to that conclusion and start this process of writing this book?
Sure. So I've been writing this book a really long time, actually. I've been talking about it a bit in press lately, and people say, so why did you write this now? And I thought, I publish it now, but I haven't written it now. I've been writing it a really long time, in large part because I've been so interested in thinking about the ways that African American women often fall out of the conversation that we have on race on the one hand and about gender on the other. So this is an old problem and one that black feminist scholars have written about a lot, this idea that when we say black, it's as though we're only designating black men, and when we say women, it's as though we're only designating white women. And the fact is that we actually have very different sets of political and social and economic questions that fall at the intersection of race and gender. And so this book is really just meant to be a contribution in a long line of both literature and social science work trying to think about the specific experiences of black women.
Now, you say there are four stereotypes for generally about black women, and I want to talk about each one of those and kind of give us an example of how that person is manifested societally. So the first one would be, let's start with Jezebel, for example.
Sure. So there are more stereotypes in this, by the way, but these are the ones that I think of as most politically and socially relevant. And not just me, but actually I did a bunch of focus groups, and these are the things that other African-American women said to me show up over and over again in their lives. And so this Jezebel stereotype is the idea of the hypersexual black woman, the woman who is lewd, lascivious, always available for sexual action, and even more importantly, on a policy position, that black women don't control their own fertility in reasonable and ethical ways. And so what we see is this is, on the one hand, a stereotype that goes all the way back to slavery, that helped to justify using enslaved women as breeders.
Mm-hmm.
But it still has resonance as late as, this particular economic cycle where we continue to talk about welfare and the 1980s welfare queen as though African American women are the primary contribution to our economic downturn as a result of their out-of-control sexuality. And so we keep seeing the reemergence of this particular narrative about Black women.
And that's how that whole conversation of sterilization and all of that comes into play also.
Oh, absolutely. Or that huge billboard in Soho that said, the most dangerous place to be a Black child is in the womb, right? This idea that Black women are fundamentally unethical and immoral when it comes to our sexuality and our reproduction, and that it therefore must be controlled, that there has to be oversight, and that the economic consequences are our own fault.
Mm-hmm. And then you go on to talk about the mammy myth. Who is she?
Oh, yeah. So the mammy is a very, very powerful myth. And, we don't want to get too stuck here. It's not just mammy in the version you might recognize, the Aunt Jemima on the pancake box,
right,
although it's pretty appalling that still exists, or, for example, Hattie McDaniel in Gone with the Wind.
Mm-hmm.
But also this kind of idea that Black women are magically capable of solving everyone else's problems, and particularly the problems of white women and of the white domestic sphere. And so, this version of mammy really shows up even in moments like the first Sex and the City movie, which I talk about a bit in the book, this idea that a young woman in her 20s could come in and solve all of both the relationship and the kind of business problems of, the lead character, even though she was 20 years younger than her, that she had this kind of magical capacity.
You also see that in The Help. I know that's one of your favorite movies.
Oh, yeah. We can't start talking about The Help or we won't have anything else to talk about today. But that's right. It is such a constant that in certain ways we don't even always recognize it because it shows up so regularly.
Mm-hmm. And then the third one is Sapphire, which we all recognize also.
Yeah, Sapphire is that image of the angry Black woman. And I think what we want to be really clear about here is it's the idea that Black women are both irrationally angry and always angry. Mm-hmm. Anger is fine, particularly in the political realm. A little righteous anger goes a long way politically. But the problem with our stereotype of Black women is this idea that they're always angry and that they're irrationally angry. So that when you see Maxine Waters passionately discussing the issue of poverty and crime, rather than taking her seriously, you can just write her off as, one of those angry Black women.
Mm-hmm. And then the fourth one, which I was a little surprised at, was the strong Black woman. Yeah,
so the strong Black woman, I say, is actually kind of a stereotype that pushes back against some of these others. Mm-hmm. So, those three stereotypes are all clearly negative. And when we think about the strong Black woman, I think our first impulse is to think that she's a positive stereotype, this idea that we're capable of so much, that we can make things happen with limited economic resources. And a lot of people, have said to me over the years, well, that's not a myth, that's just true, right? Black women are strong. But the reason it becomes a negative politically, and part of what I show in the book, is if you believe that Black women are naturally capable of overcoming all difficulties and circumstances, it can actually lead to a kind of political quietism. In other words, to not ask for what you need politically because you believe it's your birthright to simply be able to overcome all the obstacles in your way.
So the whole idea of no matter what, I will get through this and I will take care of this. So therefore, you don't ask other people to help you out.
And most specifically in the context of politics, you don't ask the state to help you out. That you, the other big idea I talk about in the book is the idea of shame. Mm-hmm. And so if you're supposed to always be strong, then any display of need or weakness, you can experience it as a crisis of shame and a feeling ashamed. So here you have others pushing the government, demanding what they need. But if you demand what you need, you somehow failed and you're somehow weak and incompetent. And so in those ways, it can actually lead us not to asking for all of what we deserve as citizens.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call and let us know, do you recognize any of these stereotypes and what you think about them in terms of political power? Melissa, who is perpetuating these stereotypes? Is it us, as in black women? Is it white people? Is it black men? Who perpetuates this?
Yes.
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 All of the above.
So, so it's one of the things I think that's really important to remember, particularly when we start talking about politics here, is that this is not about a council of 25 rich and powerful white men who sit around a table and decide what kinds of mean things they're going to say about black women, right? That's not what's going on here, and so you can't fight it politically that way, as though that's what's happening. Instead, we need to think of this as being perpetuated in a couple of ways. One, institutionally, it has to do with such long histories of these stereotypes that we're sometimes not even aware of how much they impact our notion that this is who black women are. The second is culturally, and part of that culture is about a kind of broader, often white-dominated American culture. So, for example, you'll see the angry black woman show up in that Super Bowl commercial where the black woman was throwing cell phones at people, right? Yes. And it's just like, I'm sorry, why is this happening? But the angry black woman also is an absolute staple of black popular culture as well. If you think about Tyler Perry's notions of how he portrays who black women are, often in both his comedic and dramatic films, this idea that they're just kind of angry, out of control, constantly needing to be sort of calmed down. So it's not, and by the way, often African American women contributing and what I would say being complicit in the political and cultural stereotyping of ourselves. I'm not, sort of trying to be the fun police and go around and say, that's a mean thing to say, that's a mean thing to say, but rather to ask sort of what are the consequences of consistently living in a world where all of the images that you see of yourself are these kind of distorted notions of who black women are.
So even popular culture, I know that you pointed out in the book, for example, when you were talking about the Anita Hill incident with Clarence Thomas and how there were a lot of black people who were very sympathetic to him, saying, how could the black woman, bring the brother down, kind of a thing, as opposed to looking at what she was going through in terms of bringing this behavior to the forefront.
Oh, look, this is one of those classic moments that when I talk to African American audiences, they always want to deny it, but it really is true that more than 50% of African Americans supported the confirmation of Clarence Thomas. And that support came largely after he said that the Senate confirmation hearings were a high-tech lynching. And I talk about it a bit in the book because this language of lynching evokes a very particular kind of story in black communities. As soon as we hear the word lynching, we know whose side to be on, right? You are not supposed to be on the side of the lynchers. So when you hear that and when it's evoked in that way, it's about black men's vulnerability relative to the state. The problem is that Anita Hill didn't have a parallel, similar thing that she could call her experience. We don't have a trope or a kind of common wisdom for the experience of being a black woman who is sexually vulnerable to African American men. We don't have a word for that. We don't have a high-tech what. What would that be? And so this is, again, my point about how our silences about the experiences of African American women can sometimes lead us to literally choose politically things that are not in our own interest. In this case, supporting the confirmation of Clarence Thomas, most of whose judicial decisions during his time on the court have been very much against the interests of African
American women. Now, the whole idea also of black women and the feminist movement and being able, you brought this up a little bit in the beginning of either a choice between being black or being a woman. And we don't have that choice. We're both. But do we connect with other women in terms of the issues that the gender issues that people face?
Well, again, so here's part of the challenge. So let's think about some of the key issues that were part of, what we think of as the modern feminist movement.
Mm-hmm.
One was about employment, the ability and opportunity for women to get out of the domestic sphere and go to work. Well, look, that had been a long reality for African American women. The concern wasn't getting into the workplace. It was about getting fair treatment in the workplace.
Exactly.
And particularly, and very often, the people from whom we were not getting fair treatment were, in fact, white women, because for most of the 20th century, the number one category of employment for black women was domestic labor, working in the household of white women. And so when our employment struggles were against these very women who were themselves looking for opportunities to work. Think about a second issue, which is the issue of reproductive rights. Now, on the one hand, African American women clearly need access to birth control, access to legal and safe abortion services, all of that. But it's also true that within African American history, reproductive choice has not just been about not having children. It's also been about the choice to have children,
mm-hmm.
having your reproductive right to reproduce actually supported. And that did not jive as well with, much of what was happening in the feminist movement. So, again, part of what happens is the kind of silencing of how women of color, and particularly poorer women of color, what looks like a women's issue can be very, very different.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of this you point out in the book comes out through the experiences of black women during Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, the whole book changed really on August 29th, 2005. It was initially a book that I'd written about a third of, and
mm-hmm.
it was really about resource disparities, all the things that black women don't have, and you can write plenty of books about this, education and wealth and income equality, all of those kinds of things. But Katrina and the levee failure after Katrina and then the government failure after the levee failure really changed what the book was about, because part of what we saw was not only an issue of resource disparities, what you actually have and don't have,
right,
but how being seen as a non-citizen, in the case of Katrina, as a refugee,
mm-hmm.
can actually impact how the political world responds to you. I show through some data in the book that when you have an African-American woman's face and the language of refugee, we actually can demonstrate that there is a reluctance to provide rebuilding and restoration services through government when you have this black woman's face and her children and the language of refugee. And that was the primary framing post-Katrina.
Because the language of refugee indicates that she's not even a citizen of this country.
Exactly. I mean, there is nothing wrong with being a refugee. There's nothing wrong with being a person who is seeking refuge. But people who were displaced post-Katrina are not refugees because they did not cross an international border. It's simply an inaccurate term. But when you use that language, I mean, I like to say, imagine the thought experiment if instead of, CNN and NBC and everyone else saying, look at all those refugees trapped in New Orleans, what if you'd heard, look at all those Democratic voters trapped on the roofs of their home, right? Imagine how different the response might have been if Democrats had right off recognized that those individuals were not some refugees from a distant land. They are the core constituency of Democratic voters in the state of Louisiana.
And even the people who were affected, while they had not read your book yet, but in the whole idea of using American flags to signal, to put out there that we were talking about the proliferation of American flags and how people were surprised that as many people that were affected by the storm actually had American flags in their homes.
And very particular kinds of American flags. The size of those flags indicates that they are probably the flags that came from the caskets of service members. These are not the little, ones that you hand to your kid to wave at a 4th of July parade.
Right.
These are the enormous flags that are folded very particularly and handed to the families of men and women who die in service to their country. And so we're talking about people who are the family members of those who gave their life for this country, trapped in a city without so much as bottled water brought to them, waving these flags, indicating not only their need for rescue, but their connection to America, their role as citizens. And yet it was so easy to understand them not as citizens, but as thugs, as criminals, as dangers to the social and political fabric.
So, and we only have a few minutes left, but what do we do as we recognize these stereotypes and as we try to change? And I'm talking about from a Black woman's perspective. What do we need to do to start to turn this around so that we can have power?
Sure. So one of the things to remember is that you can never fix a stereotype by acting the opposite of it. And I just want to be really clear that the reason that people believe that Black women, are Jezebels and Mammies and Sapphires is not because we're actually Jezebels, Sapphires, and Mammies. Mm-hmm. We have never been those things. Those stereotypes operate and exist and persist because they do a very particular kind of political and social work. So the goal is not, and this is hard, but the goal is not to somehow get other people to see us the right way by buttoning up and being respectable and never listening to hip hop and only speaking in proper diction and modulating your voice so you don't sound angry. Even if you do all that, you will still
that stereotype.
Just look at the experience of Anita Hill, or look at the experience of First Lady Obama and the things they say about her that are so wildly inaccurate. Mm-hmm. So the goal is not to change the stereotypes per se. The goal is for us not to try to accommodate them as we're doing our own emotional and political work. So even if people think you are a welfare queen, if in fact the current social welfare system leaves children in poverty at a percentage that is obscene in a country as rich as ours, then we have to go and demand that the welfare system provide a stronger social safety net for single mothers and children. They're going to try to shame us with it. They're going to call us, whores and say that we don't control our own fertility. And who cares? We have got to go and demand the rights other citizens have. Because if we are shamed by these stereotypes into leaving the public sphere, into not asking for what we deserve, then we've accommodated them rather than fought back against them.
And that also means that we need to rise and put our voices out there in terms of running for office, in terms of being involved in the political process.
Absolutely. Look, it is, I say it to my students every year, voting is like brushing your teeth. I'm not impressed when you're a voter. Like that is the brushing your teeth of democracy. The greatest thing that you can do for your country is to run for office. And you don't have to run for president. You don't have to run for Congress. Stand for, local offices. Stand for your school board. Run for an office that doesn't cost $500,000 to run for, because, democracy works when we have a broad representative cross-section of people who are all in there together speaking what our truths are.
Well, I could talk to you all day, but I know you have to run. Melissa Harris Perry, you can see her on MSNBC and in The Nation. You can read up on her, and her book is called Sister Citizen by Melissa Harris Perry, and you can check out her website at melissaharrisperry.com. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us, and please tell me you'll come back so we can talk about some other things, all things political.
Great. I would love to do that.
All right. You take care. Okay. Thank you so much.
All righty.
And, I want to share a secret with all of you out there listening to me right now. Everyone who works on Another View, that's producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, and yours truly, we are all members of WHRV. And even though we work here, we believe in public media. And we know that we could not bring you shows like this one without your support. So we're going to kick it over now to Nicole Cleveland and Jan Johnson there in Pledge Central to give you a chance to find out how to feel as good as we do, because we belong.
Thank you so much, Barbara. This is Nicole Cleveland. I'm with Jan Johnson, and we are in day 7 of our pledge drive. And if you enjoy Another View radio show, we want you to step up and make your pledge of support. We want you to call right now, 889-9476, and say, hey, I support Another View radio. I support what Barbara Ham Lee and Lisa Godley are doing in the community, and I just want to make my vote count. How do you do that? You pick up the phone and you dial 889 888-949-9476. Where else will you hear these interviews? Where else will you hear the interviews with the author today, Sister Citizen, Shame, Stereotypes, and Black Women in America? Barbara is not ashamed, and she is not shy to bring the tough topics to the table. She talks about it each and every week. So I know you feel that way. I know I feel that way. Call 889-9476.
That's right. 889-9476 is the number to call, whether you are a fan of Another View or maybe you're just a fan of Barbara Hamley's, like we both are.
Yes.
Barbara mentioned that she and Lisa and Perry, they're all members of WHRV. Nicole and I actually work here as well, and we are members as well. And I think that says a lot for an organization when the people who work there believe in it so much that they too want to step up and become a member to support the station. 889-9476 is the number to call with your support, or you can go online to WHRV.org and point, click, and contribute.
Yes, each and every week, Barbara and Lisa, they go behind the scenes. They do their research. They just don't bring you anything. They know what they're talking about. They're looking at the topics, the issues that are going on in our community, and they bring the guests on the air to bring you insight and to educate you. I love the round table each and every month. I absolutely love the round table, and I shoot them emails when I love something or I'm educated by something, because they need to know you're making a difference. And if you feel that way, if you feel that Barbara and Lisa and Perry and the entire crew that brings you Another View, you value it, pick up the phone, dial 889-9476, or if you're like me, I'm sitting in my office and I'm streaming. I'm listening in my office. Point, click, and contribute. And when you do that, you'll be entered to win a hot tub. Tell them a little bit about the hot tub.
Well, yes, point, click, and contribute, and you'll be entered to win a hot tub. It doesn't matter what level you come in, whatever level you're comfortable with. Pledge online. It's a hot spring portable spa. It includes delivery and setup, everything that you need to have this wonderful hot tub in your backyard or on your porch.
Wherever you would like it. Right. It is portable. It goes with you. And we want you to pick up the phone. We want you to dial 889-9476. We cannot bring you shows like Another View. We cannot bring you the educational programs we bring to you day in and day out without your support. And some people think that they have to give at the $1,000 level. They have to give at the $5,000 level. You know, it's whatever you are comfortable with. If it's $35, give it $35. If our basic membership is $48, you can call, set that up on a credit card, or if you would like, you don't want to put it on your credit card, let the volunteer know to send you an invoice. Put it on as a check. We can do that too. If you'd like to give $300, break it up monthly, we can do that too. Give it whatever level you are comfortable with.
We will accommodate you, right?
That's right.
As far as Another View, you know, I don't know of any other media outlet that dedicates an entire hour to what's going on in the African American community, and it, you know, such positive stories and stories that get you thinking, and you know, so it really is just it's a great gift that we are giving to our WHRV family. So if you want to support Another View and let Barbara know how much you enjoy her program, please give us a call at 889-9476.
That's right. And when you do that, you can say, I'm part of the 60% of people that support WHRV. You're part of that when you say, I made my pledge of support. I made my dollar count. I made my $25 count. You can go out and you can say, I didn't just hear it on Another View, but I made it possible because I made my pledge to Another View. So if that is you and you value those stories day in and day out, I believe what's coming up next is an interview with the lead character in the Wizard of Oz play at the Hurrah Players, an African American. She's going to bring you the interview with that individual as well. So where are you going to get that? Interviews like that in our own backyard. Pick up the phone, dial 889-9476.
And I hope that you will pick up the phone and call. Even though you're listening to us in the middle of the show, Another View, give them a call, 889-9476. Show your support so that we can continue the conversation. Now, let me ask you a question. If someone asks you to give a speech or run a meeting or do some other sort of public speaking, do you start sweating? Do your hands get clammy? You feel like you're going to faint? You can't figure out how to effectively get your message across? Our next guest says absolutely no worries. She's here to empower all of us, but especially women, to make a powerful impact. Please welcome Christine Jahnke, author of The Well-Spoken Woman. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, Barbara. I'm feeling a little nervous now with your introduction. My hands are starting to sweat.
No way. You are a pro at this. Absolutely. Now, you are an expert in teaching others how to be a well-spoken woman. Why is it so important for women to be well-spoken?
Well, part of the reason why I wrote the book is that I think that, it would be really terrific if more women, as you mentioned, could overcome their nervousness, and really find their voices and speak out on the issues and the causes, and the things that really matter to them and their families. So that's what the book's all about, trying to provide some tips and techniques, because everybody gets nervous, right? Everybody
Absolutely.
gets nervous. And we don't want that to hold you back from saying your piece.
Now, I know that you do a lot of work with political figures and so forth, and I was reading an article about you in Politico, and you were talking about Ann Richards in '88, and I was at that convention. And I remember that speech because she talked about the silver foot in his mouth.
Yeah.
Do you remember
exactly.
that? But the whole idea of people like Barbara Jordan and like Ann Richards and others who were very commanding as women. But sometimes we hear men say, a woman can't capture my attention, or her voice is too high, or it's too whiny, or whatever. What do you tell people to make sure that impression doesn't come across?
Well, you raise an interesting point. And, in terms of the different techniques that you have available to you to improve your skills, most people don't think about how to use the voice. Mm-hmm. And that's why I focused an entire chapter in the book on Barbara Jordan, a great American woman. I don't know what was in the water in Texas.
Absolutely.
Barbara Jordan and Ann Richards, both tremendous speakers. But Barbara Jordan really knew how to use her voice. You can, it's really fun. You can go online and Google the big speeches that she gave at the convention, and you hear the majestic sound of her voice, because she knew how to control the pace. Mm-hmm. She knew how to use pauses for effect, and she had that wonderful low resonance to her voice. It was so warm. It was so reassuring. I could sit and listen to her speak all day long.
And now I was going to say, Chris, she had a God-given talent, if you will, because her voice was so deep. But that doesn't necessarily make you a good speaker just because you have a deep voice.
Well, and she recognized early on that she had this talent, mm-hmm. but she didn't rest on her laurels. And there's a little bit of a, myth that I want to debunk. It's, that people that you see who are really accomplished speakers, they were just born with the talent, or, they're just a little bit more charismatic. Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you, they may have a little bit, a gift from birth, but they also know that to improve, they have to hone their skills over time. And so Barbara Jordan was diligent about, taking what she had and working with her voice and improving it. And all of the great speakers do that.
I just think because her name is Barbara, that's all. Okay, never mind.
That helps too.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call and let us know if you have any questions or can share some stories about public speaking. And if you have any questions about how you can become better at it. Chris is here to give you some tips, so let's take advantage of it. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Now, you also have coached Michelle Obama, the First Lady.
I did, yes. What a wonderful experience. Had the opportunity to work with the First Lady when she was preparing for her first international speech after the Obamas were in the White House. And that was in Copenhagen. And it was when the United States Olympic team was competing for the 2016 games in Chicago.
In Chicago, yes.
Yeah, and unfortunately we didn't win the games, but I think people will long remember the speech that the First Lady gave because she spoke so movingly about her father and how he had shared with her, the gift of sports from when she was just a young girl with both her and her brother. And, she learned about sports for him and became, quite an athlete. And then obviously now with, what she's doing for young people and trying to get young kids moving across the country. So that was just a tremendous experience because she is, as you know, such a wonderful speaker.
Absolutely. So, Chris, how much is it the speech and how much is it the delivery of that speech?
Well, it really is both. I think what causes people to be nervous is that, what am I going to say? And the judgment that, we fear that comes along with that. And so I think most people feel much more confident when they feel good about the words, when they've had the time to prepare. Mm-hmm. Here's a little factoid that is a little bit shocking. The general rule of thumb when you're preparing any type of presentation, for every minute that you're going to speak, you really should have put an hour of prep time into it. And that's writing and rewriting and then practicing aloud, doing the rehearsal.
Wow.
So that's a lot of time, and it's not something, everyone can do every time. But for people who have something coming up on their schedule, there's an important event at work or in their personal life. Because I think it's important to look for opportunities. Speaking at a friend's shower, that's an opportunity to practice your speaking. But for the events that are important to you, those are the ones that you want to make the time so you can do a great job.
How important is it to share something personal about yourself?
Oh, I think it's very important.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very, very important. Authenticity, is the buzzword. And audiences are looking for the presenter to reveal something about themselves, to open up. Another one of the women that I feature in the book is Indra Nooyi, who is the CEO of the PepsiCo company. Mm-hmm. If PepsiCo was a country, it'd be the 37th largest country in the world. She's originally from India, and she speaks very openly about her background and her family, and talks about the need to every single day to bring who you really are, to the job, but also to presentations, because audiences know when you're not being yourself.
Yeah, they can feel when you're not being real. So when people tell you you should start with an icebreaker, you should have a joke or something like that, is that the right way to start a speech, or does it really depend on where you're speaking and what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I think, the way to think about humor is that it has both its, ups and its downs. For many people, to try to deliver a joke at the beginning of a presentation, that can be a little bit, too much.
Especially if it doesn't go over well.
Exactly, and you don't want to get off on the wrong foot, and people tend to be more nervous at the beginning. So I say, leave the joke telling to the Chris Rock and the Tina Feys of the world. But what I do think audiences appreciate, and it goes back to what we were just talking about, is humor drawn from everyday life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, telling a story, that, again, will reveal something of you. And, and another plus to humor is it demonstrates to the audience that you don't take yourself too seriously. And when you open with a good story, you can almost, feel that sigh of relief from the audience. They're saying to themselves, oh, this isn't going to be nearly as bad as I thought it was.
Absolutely. Now, what's the difference, Chris, between a male speaker and a female speaker?
Well, I don't know that there are any specific technical differences, because the same skills, whether you're a man or a woman, help you improve as a speaker. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think that women need to work on, and tell me what you think about this, Barbara, is we need to be more ready to triumph our successes.
Yes, because we tend to always credit everybody else and not ourselves. Yes.
Yeah, which is fine, and you need to do that. That's important. Give credit to the team, but when credit is due to you, this is what I say with the women that I work with. Don't be afraid to use the word I. Mm-hmm. I led a great team, and we accomplished this. I think that's really important for women to get their heads around.
And are there other common mistakes women make when they are speaking?
Well, the biggest mistake is not to take time to prepare.
Okay.
You know, you can feel that groan in the room when the presenter gets up and starts with, well, I didn't have a chance to prepare my remarks today. You know, and everybody's like, well, why are you wasting our time?
Exactly. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Bobby is joining us from Norfolk. Hi, Bobby. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how are you?
You probably know why I'm calling. I am giving a speech tomorrow at my temple. I am not uncomfortable speaking in front of groups of people. I've been doing it forever. My biggest problem is that I have a tendency to talk too fast. And I need to know, are there exercises? Is there anything I can do to not be so quick, you know, to talk?
Well, Bobby, I think that's a common concern. So what we're looking for with rate of speech is one that's conversational. Now, what in the world does that mean? Well, you know, scientists measure everything. If you are speaking at a rate that's about 140 words or so per minute, that's considered conversational. And where does it come from? That's about how fast broadcasters deliver the news. So it's a pace that people are familiar with. So you can actually clock yourself. You know, measure out, you know, what's 140 words on a piece of paper and say it out loud, you know, and see how far you get. And keep in mind that people tend to really speak quickly at the beginning when, again, they may be a little bit more nervous.
Right.
Bobby, thanks so much for calling, and good luck on your speech tomorrow. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Barbara.
So that's how quickly I speak, 140 words a minute, huh?
Or so, yeah, that's what they say. But you can clock yourself. I found it pretty much to be true.
That's interesting. Okay, I know that when you were working with the First Lady, you helped her with her stance in terms of standing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, and this is a great technique for all women because as you asked me earlier, you know, what are some things that women need to work on a little bit more? Well, you know, we tend to be more concerned about our appearance and, you know, how to use our bodies. So what I have developed is what I call the champion stance. And essentially, just two quick pointers about it. One, if you try to resist standing with your feet shoulder width apart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, that's how we all stand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem there is that you are locked in place because the knees are locked. And if there's any movement, then people tend to sway. A simple adjustment is just to put one foot in front of the other, just a couple of inches apart. Mm-hmm. And what happens, if people are listening at home, they can even stand up and do this, is the knees unlock. And if there's movement, it will be forward, thus you're moving to the audience, and it's more interactive. So it'll feel better, there's less tension on the spinal cord, and it'll look better because the movement will be to the audience. And then you always want to drop your shoulders back. Dropping the shoulders back creates a very nice presence. You look a little taller when the shoulders are back. And also it helps you project confidence because, again, if you're nervous, we tend to tense up in the neck and shoulders.
Yes.
And sometimes you can literally see that tension when you're looking at a speaker. So drop those shoulders back.
Okay, what about hand motions? To move or not to move?
Yeah, no, move the hands, absolutely. If you're nervous, it's a great way to externalize energy. And what hand gestures do for you is they open you up to the audience. You come across as more welcoming, more engaged. Mm-hmm. But the only hand gestures that don't work are, number one, finger pointing. You look a little bit like a teacher who's scolding a pupil in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And then also very rapid movement. You know, try to avoid the karate chop hand gesture.
Now, what about dialect or that? I know that there's a lot. I know some people refer to it as kind of Valley Girl, but that kind of sing-songy, ending your sentences in a question mark kind of pattern. How do you turn yourself from that?
Right, and I think that if that's how you speak, you do want to think seriously about that because it sounds a little sloppy, and it also can sound as if you are not confident about what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So some people are not aware of vocal patterns or inflection, so the first step is to tape yourself. Videotaping is best, but you can also just do an audio recording and then play back. and listen for patterns, because you have to hear it first before you can stop it.
Mm-hmm. And the last question I have for you is, when you're speaking to an audience, I personally like to make eye contact with several people in the room. But sometimes people are coached to, or women are coached to look at the wall or look at something kind of over their heads. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you. You want to make eye contact with individuals in the room. And the trick is to ensure that the movement is not too quick. You don't want your eyes darting back and forth,
right,
bobbing all around the room. But here's a way to measure your eye contact: to look at one person until you finish your sentence or you finish your thought. Mm-hmm. And then move on to somebody else and look at someone else. That will create eye contact that looks and feels much more meaningful.
But you really
try to avoid looking around mid-sentence, but deliver one sentence or thought to one person.
You really do have to practice this, though, because otherwise you'll be standing there going, okay, I'm finishing this sentence. Now I can move my eyes.
Yeah. That's why we need all that time to practice. You're absolutely right. It's not easy. It's a real exertion. And what I tell the folks I'm working with, you have to think of public speaking as a performance.
Yes.
And you got to go out there and deliver.
So, Chris, when somebody calls you and says, I want you to deliver a speech, do you really devote that hour per minute?
Well, it depends on the topic, because I've been doing this for 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm in the process of developing a presentation about the book. So, I've been thinking about it for weeks. And that won't surprise you as someone who's in the broadcasting news business. But I do. I put a lot of time into it.
Fantastic. The book is called The Well-Spoken Woman by Christine Jahnke. And Christine, we so appreciate you being with us and helping us to speak better. And I'm going to try that stance for my next speech. Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us.
Barbara, it was a great pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. And we'll be right back. 'And welcome back. A Maury High School senior is taking center stage in the Hurrah Players production of The Wizard of Oz. LaQuanda Reid is singing, dancing, and acting her way into the hearts of audiences in one theatrical production after another. And as our Lisa Godley found out, she's hoping her training here will lead her to Broadway.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high.
17-year-old LaQuanda Reid has been singing ever since she could talk, and the Maury High School senior couldn't be happier playing Dorothy in the Hurrah Players production of The Wizard of Oz.
There was a lot of people who went out for the role of Dorothy, but I'm really, really lucky that I got it. I'm really honored. We had to sing and dance at the same exact time. It was difficult. We had like 5 minutes to learn the dance, and then we had to do it as we sang, so I was just really lucky that I got it.
LaQuanda says she was very shy before she got involved with the Hurrah Players in the 8th grade. Since then, she has performed in several productions, including Hairspray, The Little Mermaid, and The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. But The Wizard of Oz is the first performance of her senior year. And like many seniors, her life is packed with activities, so she works hard to make sure it all gets done.
I go straight from school to Hurrah, and between that time of after school and rehearsal, I use that time to do my homework.
But this talented teen doesn't seem to mind. Like most of us, she grew up watching The Wizard of Oz.
When I was little, I watched it a lot. I honestly lost track of how many times I watched it, but I hadn't seen it recently until we started doing the show, and then I was like, I don't remember what some of the parts were, so I had to go back and rewatch it, but I just got caught up in that moment again of of how much I really like the movie that I watched it a couple more times. So maybe like 5 times recently.
What's so remarkable for the audience is hearing just how much LaQuanda sounds like Judy Garland did when she portrayed Dorothy in the original movie.
Which is the way back to Kansas. Surely can't go back, can you?
She describes the cast as a family, but quickly points out that it would not work without the folks behind the scenes helping pull it all together. In addition to her friends on stage, her family also has her back. LaQuanda and her 2 teenaged brothers live with her grandmother, who she says tries to never miss a performance. The 17-year-old says she's a little sad that her time with the Hurrah Players is coming to an end.
The time is coming for me to move on. It's a little depressing, but everyone has to grow. So I'm glad that they prepared me as much as they have. My last show with the Hurrah Players probably will be my summer show when I hopefully get into Footloose maybe.
After graduation, LaQuanda is headed to college. She hasn't quite made up her mind yet, but has narrowed it down to 3 choices. Her major, of course, musical theater.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. To be on Broadway. I would love it. I would just love it. I just love being on stage now, just getting up in front of all those people and just performing for them. I love putting on a good show for people. I like that feeling they get when they're like, wow, they were good. And so I just try my best and hopefully maybe work hard enough one day that I can be up there.
And those who know LaQuanda don't doubt that for a minute. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And what a talented young woman. You can catch LaQuanda Reid and the rest of the cast tonight in Elizabeth City as she portrays Dorothy once more at the Arts of the Albemarle Center at 7 p.m. As usual, there's lots going on in Hampton Roads this weekend, including the citywide health fair sponsored by the Living Waters Christian Fellowship. The theme is wholeness, wellness, and counseling, and there will be medical workshops, early detection, screenings, Zumba fitness, and so much more. The health fair is tomorrow, Saturday, October 22nd, from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Destiny Center on Warwick Boulevard in Newport News. You can find out more information on our website, anotherviewradio.org. And when you visit our website, please sign up for our e-newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs. And remember, we are in our fall pledge drive. And if you like Another View and you want to see Another View continue on the air, we would really appreciate your support by becoming a member of WHRV. It's so easy to do. It's very quick. Just by dialing 889-9476, you talk to one of the volunteers, and they can tell you all of the different gifts of appreciation that we have available, but we really need you to become a member. Show your support of Another View. This is our first drive. This is the first time we've been on radio in the radio drive, and we need our supporters to come forward and show us that they love us, okay? On behalf of our Another View staff, producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, and phone screener Brett Lewis, we really appreciate all of your support. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. I hope you have a fabulous weekend and join us next Friday for Another View.